which players are set to go off in week 13 and put up huge point totals that might help you win your matchups in fantasy football? Well, we're about to give you our picks. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, he's Chris, and we're here to break down our boom picks for week 13. These are the guys we're feeling really good about based on matchups and how they've done lately. All right, Chris, let's kick it off. Who's your first pick?
Well, call me crazy. Call me an optimist, call me a sucker, call me an idiot, call me whatever you want. But I am predicting a DeAndre Swift boom game this week. And I know, look, I have DeAndre Swift in a lot of leagues this year. I was very high on DeAndre Swift, and it's been rough with DeAndre Swift. But there are some things to be really encouraged about on that Thanksgiving game. Number one, he had 8 targets in that game. He was out there a lot on passing downs, on third downs, and that's a huge valuable snaps for a running back. Also, he got 3 opportunities near the goal line. He had a touchdown called back that looked like he scored. He had another throw where he dropped it right at the pylon that could have been a touchdown, and he got another carry close to the goal line. So it wasn't just all Jamal Williams getting all the goal line work, in week 12. Also, he pulled away from Justin Jackson. Now, yes, Jamal Williams still outsnapped him, but Jamal Williams is just getting the between the tackles carries and the goal line carries, and we've seen it with Jamal Williams. He gives you nothing outside of touchdowns. He scored in week 12, and he still gave you nothing. DeAndre Swift scored as many points as Jamal Williams without a touchdown, and actually, if you look at their expected fantasy points, which is basically takes out, the result and just looks at the touches they got, DeAndre Swift was expected to score more points than Jamal Williams. And now he gets a Jacksonville defense that is pretty much really bad against everything, but especially against running backs. They're terrible against running backs. I feel like they're starting to get more confidence in DeAndre Swift. They're using him in more valuable situations. They're using him in the passing game. They're using him near the goal line. I think this is it. I think it finally happens. Week 13 is the week we look back on and say, finally, we got DeAndre Swift back.
Man, there would be a lot of fantasy owners would be very happy if that happens. Hopefully they have him in their lineups if it does happen. But yeah, I'm with you. Maybe week 13 is when he finally gets lucky. All right, so I'll talk about a guy who, he's had some good games already. There's some question about Aaron Jones and this whole Packers offense because we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. And I'm here to tell you that I don't think it matters. Aaron Jones, as we've seen, has been really solid. A guy that's, even though had some down games, is so hard to bench. But here's the thing. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers, whether it's Jordan Love, it doesn't matter because, yes, Aaron Rodgers is the owner of the Chicago Bears. I think Aaron Jones is like co-owner. At least he has a little part of the team because he does go off against this defense, which is not a very good run defense anyways. You might remember back in the beginning of the season, in week 2, he had 170 total yards and 2 touchdowns. And then you go back to last year in the 2 games against Chicago, he totaled 175 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2 games. All right, Aaron Jones likes playing the Bears. If Jordan Love or a banged up Aaron Rodgers is playing, either way, I think the game script is going to be very run heavy against this team. So I like the fact that he's probably going to get a lot of volume. And of course, the matchup is great. He's going to have a lot of success. I think Aaron Jones is going to have one of those Aaron Jones types of weeks where it could go for multiple touchdowns, over 100 yards. I'm going to say he's a must start if you have him anywhere. All right, let's keep going. Give me your next boom pick.
I'm saying we're going to see a boom game from Keenan Allen this week. When he came back from injury finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he had a nice game. Gave you 12 fantasy points because he fumbled. Got some targets, got some catches, looked good. Then we expected a huge game last week, and he didn't have a bad game with 15 PPR points. He scored a touchdown. He almost caught a second touchdown. But I think this is the week where he really goes off because it's the Raiders, and they're terrible against the pass. They're pretty much terrible against everything, but as we saw last week against Seattle, both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett had big games in this game, and Keenan Allen is obviously Justin Herbert's guy, the number 1 receiver. He gets end zone targets. He gets all sorts of targets down the field. I don't think we're going to see Mike Williams this week, and even if we do, is Mike Williams 100%? And in this matchup, does it even matter? Because there's enough here for Keenan Allen to still go off. So we've kind of seen the progression of Keenan Allen. Came back that first week, looked good. Last week, looked better. This week, I think he looks phenomenal and becomes an every week must-start wide receiver going forward. The matchup is too good. Justin Herbert playing great right now. I think if you got Keenan Allen, you lock him in. He's going to have a big week.
All right, so I'm going to go with a receiver that has been up and down throughout most of the season. You really don't know what you're going to get on a weekly basis with Christian Kirk. Well, let's roll the dice and say this is going to be a boom week because, well, he gets the Detroit Lions. I think that's a good place to start. And here's the thing. Lions, I know, have been pretty bad on all end of defense, but they've been particularly bad against slot receivers. Nobody plays in the slot more than Christian Kirk. And look, we saw this past week, even though you say, well, look, Gabe Davis didn't go off. We thought he could. Stephon Diggs, he had a good game, but he didn't have his best game. He didn't completely dominate. But look who had a big game. Isaiah McKenzie, their little slot receiver. And then we saw a couple of weeks ago, Wan'Dale Robinson of the Giants at 100 yards. Okay, and then in the Dolphins game where they completely ran over the Lions in the second half, Jalen Waddle, huge game. You see a trend here, right? So the type of receiver that puts up big numbers against Lions is the Christian Kirk type. And just because he had a bad game last week, I think that kind of makes me more optimistic that he'll have a big game this week. Okay, and then we've talked about Trevor Lawrence. He had a comeback last week. Maybe this is a stepping stone for him. Maybe it's nothing. Who knows? But you've got to at least feel encouraged that he's got something there. Look, I know Zay Jones was his guy last week. Maybe they both feast this week. Maybe you should be starting Christian Kirk, and maybe you can also go with Zay Jones because the Lions are that bad. And look, the Lions, if nothing else, look, if DeAndre Swift goes off, like you say, Chris, which I fully believe he can, maybe this is a really high-scoring game, and you just want a piece of the action on both sides. So, anyways, I'm feeling it. I'm going with Christian Kirk. I know there's risk, but no risk, no reward, right? Okay, so give me one more boom for Week 13.
Well, you like Christian Kirk. I like Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence has been really good the last few weeks. In fact, since Week 9, did you know that Trevor Lawrence is the QB 10? That's right, he's the 10th highest scoring QB since Week 9. And he's only played 3 games because he had his bye week during that stretch. He is averaging 20 points per game in standard scoring 4-point touchdown leagues. He's averaging 20 points per game over the last 3 games. And now you just talked about it. He gets the Lions, who happen to be the worst defense against quarterbacks. They are one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL, but the worst against fantasy quarterbacks. And I like Christian Kirk a lot this week. I also like Zay Jones a lot this week. He suddenly has weapons in the receiving game. He has receivers who can make plays. He should have a healthy Travis Etienne, who we know can make plays out of the backfield. I think this is going to be another smash week for Trevor Lawrence. If you picked him up a few weeks ago because of bye weeks, I think you just keep rolling with him. Even in a 1 QB league, I would happily play Trevor Lawrence over a lot of quarterbacks this week. I think he's going to have a huge game in this matchup. Like you said, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, a shootout. You want a piece of it. Get Christian Kirk, but also get Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to keep this streak going. 4 in a row, over 20 fantasy points. Keep rolling with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and look, if you play DFS, I think that's one of the stacks you want to chase is the Kirk Lawrence stack right there. Now, I'm big on Trevor Lawrence as well, and I think a lot of people, well, I know a lot of people are going to be asking, in his first game back, what do you do with Deshaun Watson? I'm going to start Trevor Lawrence over Deshaun Watson because even though it's a great matchup for him, I'm not quite sure if he's ready to go off in his first game in, a year and a half? But that said, I feel good about his pass catchers. I think you have to start Amari Cooper, but the guy I really think is going to smash is David Njoku. So at the tight end position, I think David Njoku must start, and I think he booms. Look, let's rewind a few weeks ago before he got hurt. Remember when David Njoku was all of a sudden a top 5 fantasy tight end statistically, and he was a must start, and then he got hurt, and he was kind of slowly brought back. But I think it's safe to say he's back because in week 12, he was up to 81% of the snaps, which is kind of where he was pre-injury. He got 7 targets, And of course, you saw him score that touchdown. With Watson back against Houston, against this defense, I think it's a big Njoku week. If you have Njoku and you've been holding on to some other or streaming some other tight end, forget those tight ends. You could probably start Njoku the rest of the year, but in week 13, I think you've got to start him. All right, those are the players we think are going to go off in week 13 and boom for you. Don't forget, start, sit advice, and everything else you need to win. Week 13 is right here in this playlist. Check it out, and we'll help you win your matchups.